Intro in 3, 2. Wait. I forgot something. Jared, talk.
Yeah, I'm going to talk now. My name is, hey guys, I'm Jared Markle. I'm the co-host of Student of the Gun Radio, and I'm sitting in my cave here.
Okay, good.
Sound okay?
Yeah, last time we did radio, you were super duper quiet.
Okay.
All right, now, Dad, you can go ahead and start us off in 3, 2.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Wednesday episode of Student of the Gun Radio. According to the calendar, this is episode 997.
Whew, getting close.
Which means that next week's will be 998-999.
And then everything is ruined.
And then, so in November, the first episode of November, if my calendar is correct, will be episode 1000. Isn't that right? The official, and yeah, we've talked about it before, how we screwed ourselves up by doing part 1, part 2, part 3. So we have 1,500 episodes, but they're only in number 997. But the official number 1,000 is coming up only in a couple weeks.
Woo.
So make sure you're there. Make sure you're paying attention. All right, today we've got for you the media always lies for Democrats. And we've got some examples of that, and we need to remind you, and we're going to give you some ammunition to put in your quiver. Brownell's bullet points for you today. I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to hip you to how you can not destroy your magazines. And we also have a Student of the Gun homeroom from our friends at Crossbreed Holsters. All that on Student of the Gun Radio.
Stand by for education, enlightenment, enjoyment, and entertainment.
He's not here to talk about your feelings. He's not here to say what you want to hear. He's here to say what needs to be said.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, please welcome your host, the pimp hand of America, Professor Paul Markle.
All right. Yes, indeed. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. One of the things that I'm going to have Jared remind you guys, well, number one, we're going to do a Q&A at the end of the show. So if you're watching this live, if you're watching it live on Facebook or Discord or whatever, and you have a question that you think would be pertinent, type it in there, and the boys will pay attention. And the other thing that I didn't make a note of, but you guys, we just talked about it. People have said, hey, Facebook, is run by communists, and so's Instagram, and so's yada, yada. And, they suck. And we're like, yeah, you're right. We agree with you. Have you subscribed to us on Full 30 yet? Are you following us on full30.com? And you say, well, no. Well, why not? If you're one of the Facebook sucks people or YouTube sucks people, and we're like, we get it. We know. So how are we going to come up with a viable alternative to those if people if you don't participate? So in order to have a viable alternative to Facebook and YouTube, we need you, everybody who's out there listening, to go to full30.com/channels, whatever. It's in the show notes.
Yep.
Follow the link in the show notes and subscribe to our Full 30 channel and support our endeavors so that we can expand that and we won't have to rely on YouTube and Facebook and what have you.
Yep.
So
And
we have a solution.
Since Student of the Gun has the best audience of all of the audiences, I want to invite you guys to test out the pre-release of Full 30. So we've updated the technology and the face of Full 30, and we've actually got it up on a pre-release right now. If you're interested in that, I need you to send me a direct email. Just send that to info@studentofthegun.com. I'll get you all the information that you need. And the pre-release there, it's essentially a beta. If you're willing to drive the features of the platform, you want to use it and tell us what you want so that we can then put it in there, then be part of the pre-release.
And if he's talking and you say, I have no idea what a beta is, what are you talking about? Is that like a cuck? And you're like, no, a beta is not a cuck. It's a test.
You have an alpha stage, you have a beta stage.
So there you go. So full 30, new good things coming on full 30 for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into our Brownells bullet points of the day. We're going to talk about using speed loaders and strips. Boom. All right, Brownells at brownells.com. If you haven't signed up for their newsletter yet, you're wrong. You should sign up for their newsletter because they will. And you know what I did right when I was doing show prep? I thought, what the heck? I'll go over to Brownells and see what's going on. And I clicked their sales page, and they must have bought 100 million of these 6 months ago or 8 months ago or something, because they still have PMags on sale, which is cray.
That's great.
We're 2 weeks out from one of the most contentious presidential elections. We're literally 2 weeks out from deciding whether the United States of America will remain a representative republic or will fall into socialist anarchy. And they have full capacity M16 magazines on sale. That's nuts. But take advantage of this while you can. But that's not what I wanted to. Well, I mean, I kind of do. So I went to the page and I saw they have PMags on sale, and right below it they have official AR-15 aluminum mags from Brownells. About, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years ago, Brownells won a contract to provide aluminum G.I. Joe magazines for the U.S. Army. So they started branding and making mags under their own label. And they've got a ton of those. And they're actually on sale. So if you like plastic mags, if you're one of these guys like, I never trust my life to a plastic mag. Okay, great. Buy aluminum mags. Brownells has aluminum mags. You can buy them by the case. You can buy a case of 100. They will sell you a case of 100 if that's what you want. If that's how you want to live your life, they will sell them to you. So pay attention and jump your butt over there to brownells.com. But while we're talking about magazines, their G.I. Joe magazines have these weird little lips in the back, these vertical lips, and that's so that you can put a speed loader and you can use 10-round stripper clips of ammunition, 5.56 ammo. There's a lot of ammunition comes. This is a military thing. It's not a civilian thing because I don't know, however many years ago, 100 years ago, somebody figured out, hey, if we put these rounds, instead of giving them to the G.I. Joes loose, if we put them in clips of 5 or 10 or whatever, like the 7.62 by 54, you can get in 5-round clips. And I'm pretty sure that, and well, of course, everybody knows about the famous Garand, the 8-round clips and all that stuff. So they said, well, we could help our G.I. Joes, manage their ammo so they don't have a bunch of loose ammo laying in pockets and so forth. And also, in addition to not having loose ammo everywhere, they can load their magazines and their rifles faster and more efficiently. Okay, great. Fantastic. And a lot of you guys have gone out and you've bought G.I. Joe surplus ammo, and it comes in 10-round clips. Well, in order to get that into a magazine, you need a little device. It's called a speed loader. And you stick that over the back of the magazine. Then you put the clip in and you push down. Now, this is where I have seen young, dumb, full of testosterone mongoloids ruin their magazines. And we didn't catch this early on because we weren't paying attention. When I was working with a military school, the kids would go into the ammo tent and the armorers would give them ammo and they would take their magazines and they'd load them all up in the ammo tent. And then they come out on the firing line where we instructors were. And after a few months, we started noticing a lot of malfunctions with the M4s, especially double feeds, crazy amounts of double feeds. And we're like, what the farfignugan? And it didn't take very long for we experienced shooters to figure out that the reason that these guys were having double feeds, and if you guys don't know, if you're having a double feed or double feed problems in your semi-automatic firearm, it's probably a bad mag. 99 times out of 100, if you have a double feed problem, you got two pieces of ammo slip up, or a piece of ammo hasn't finished ejecting yet, and another one pops up, if that's happening, it's probably because of your magazines. And how does that happen with AR-15 magazines? Well, here's what people were doing. And this is what we discovered. The armorers, who were former Navy guys, that's me shuddering, were telling the young skulls full of mush to put the speed loader on, put the strip in, and then take the magazine and shove it against the edge of the table, the range table. You're like, yeah, Paul, duh, that's how you use one. No, that's how you use one if you want to destroy your magazine. Well, what do you mean? Well, if I want to destroy my magazine? You guys, do you understand that the space on the lips of a magazine is very purposely and deliberately designed, right? It has to be an exact width, whatever it is, whether it's a Glock mag, a Beretta mag, a Sig mag, an AR-15 mag, whatever. Those lips, they have to be a certain distance. There's that space, and Brownells actually sells lip gauges so that you can test your magazines and make sure that they're within spec. And here's the deal. If they get out of spec, what will happen is you will have feeding problems. Oh, what? Yeah. So what these mongoloids were doing, because they were told by ignorant people to do this, is they were taking these speed loaders and they're jam, jam, jam. And there's every time they put 10 rounds in, they're slamming the feed lips of the magazine into the side of the table. And it didn't take very long for those magazines to get out of spec. Now, if you do that with a PMag, they won't bend. Eventually, they'll break. What you'll do is every time you do that, you'll put little micro cracks in the polymer. And then at some point in time in the future, it's just going to fail and it's just going to break. With an aluminum mag, it won't break. What it'll do is it will basically bend your feed lips out of spec. And so all the money that you spent on those super cool G.I. Joe 30-round magazines, you just wasted because you ruined the lips of the magazine. The spring's still good, follower's still good, body's still good, but the lips of the mag are out of spec, and good luck trying to get them back into spec. All right? You're like, okay, Paul, well, how are you supposed to do it? Now, this is one of those things that's hard to do on the radio. But basically, you take the empty magazine, put the speed loader on it, grab the strip, put the base of the magazine against the center of your chest, take your palm of your hands or your fingers, and just push down. Push it against your chest, and then do another one, and do another one, and do another one. First of all, that's how they taught G.I. Joes to do that way back when in the olden days anyway, because they were loading them in the field, and they didn't have a range bench to smash their magazines against. So they just did that. So if you're going to use speed loaders, G.I. Joe aluminum magazine speed loaders and speed strips, put the base of the magazine against your chest and push backwards with your hands. Stop slamming your magazines into tables or any other hard object, because what you're doing is you're reducing the usable life of those magazines every single time you do that. Now, you might be one of those dudes, you're like, hey, I just bought a case of 100 from Brownell, so every time I use one, I'm just going to throw it away. You might be one of those guys. I mean, if you're one of those guys, and every time you use a magazine, you throw it away, let me know, and I'll take your used mags. I'm going to assume that most people in the audience don't want to abuse and ruin their magazines. And generally, regardless of the semi-automatic firearm, if you're having malfunctions and stoppages, changing a magazine will almost always fix it. Because 9 times out of 10, it's the mag problem. It's either the user or the first cause is the user, and the second cause is the magazine. And the third cause is actually, internally, like an ejector or an extractor or something like that. So I hope that helps you guys. I hope that's a helpful hint for you. Excuse me. So, all right, we can move on now. Duracoat, because life is too short
to have an ugly gun.
Yep. Check them out. They've got badass finishes at DuracoatFirearmFinish.com. Close your eyes. Imagine a color. All right. Now open them back up. Go to Duracoat's website, and I bet you're going to find that color. Then you're going to be able to do good things with a gun, a knife, an ammo can, a mailbox. I don't care. Duracoat your dog. I don't care what you do. Just understand that you can't eat Duracoat.
Yeah.
It's not edible. Not recommended for eating. All right. SWAT Fuel wants you to have a sharper body and a stronger body.
Like a chiseled slab of hard man body. That's what they want you to have.
They want you to have a stronger body and a sharper mind. Check them out at SWATfuel.com. All right.
Use that promo code while you're there. SOTG. You save yourself some money on the order, and it's actually a pretty substantial amount. Now, if you're a grad program member, log into the student lounge and go to the partner discounts page because you get an even bigger discount.
There you go. All right, Zach, tell them to listen up.
ShopSOTG.com is the perfect place to go if you are a student of the gun. Whether you want to expand your brain, increase your marksmanship, or help keep your family safe. All that, plus the pimp hand brands that you love. ShopSOTG.com has almost anything that an American patriot would want. Education, enlightenment, and entertainment, and we're open 24/7. Check out ShopSOTG.com today and see for yourself.
Yes, indeed. That is what you should do. And you know what you need to do, Jared, since you're the only one in the family with an original Stoner shirt? You need to take a photograph and post that photograph.
Yep.
That's how people know.
Am I really the only one?
Yep, you are the only one.
Oh, that I thought that the last order went to your place.
Yep.
Oh, it just didn't get. Oh, okay.
Did not.
Well, darn.
So there is a new product section on shopsotg.com with all the new products. And if you haven't seen those lately, go check them out because Zach's been working hard to get you guys some new stuff.
Yeah, so we've been, I think, pretty much a product a month, it seems like.
Yep. We've got the digital products, we have training products, we have physical products, got all that good stuff for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Student of the Gun homeroom, brought to you by our good friends at crossbreedholsters.com.
Pew, pew.
You guys know what? I just realized that I thought, it would be cool if I had a cough button like professional broadcasters do.
You do.
But I do have a cough button. There, I just coughed.
Woo! Man, I'll tell you what, that board is one of the best investments.
I do have a cough button. So I guess I don't have any excuses now. I just had to remind myself of that. All right. What are we going to talk about today? Well, what is the primary theme of the Crossbreed Holsters homeroom?
It's being dangerous on demand.
Being dangerous on demand. Absolutely. Before we get too far into it, when you're going to buy a product from them, use the promo code SOTG18. You save money. You're going to be a happy camper. The topic of today is will versus skill. We talked about this just a little bit with our good friend Scott Hambrick. Many, many, many years ago, a gentleman named G. Gordon Liddy wrote a book called Will. And what he meant by the word will is the will to do what is necessary. Very few people use the term will anymore. I guess it's not a hip phrase or a cool phrase or one that people use very often. But essentially, by will, you mean the mental capacity to do what you need to do. Will means to make yourself do what needs to be done, even though it's difficult, even though it's hard, even though it's not convenient, even though it might require more work and effort than you were planning on putting forward. Skill. Is skill good? Yes, it's good to have skill. It's good to have skill. I'm sure that I related this story, but many years ago, I mean, I was a young teenager, not 18 or 19, but probably 14 or 15. And I used to read Black Belt magazine, right? I used to consume Black Belt magazines. And in the editorial section of the Black Belt magazine, the very beginning, like the author section or the editor section, they lamented the death of one of their Black Belt friends because he was stabbed to death on a subway in New York City. And at 14, I thought to myself, how in the world does that happen? How does a guy who is a karate black belt get stabbed to death on a subway by some street thug, some street punk? Didn't that guy have the skill? Yeah, probably did. He probably had the skill. He probably had, if you were going to take those two people and put them in a room and measure skill, a 16 or 18-year-old New York street thug, right, and this karate black belt, the skill nod would go to the black belt, right? So how does he get stabbed to death? Because what the street punk had, what the thug had, was the will. He may not have had the same amount of skill as this black belt victim, but he had the will to do what he wanted to do. And you say, well, that's horrible. Yes, it is horrible, but it doesn't change things. He had the will to do what he wanted to do. And what he wanted to do was rob this guy. And apparently the guy wasn't being robbed fast enough, so he got stabbed. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter and this is why people say, I've gotten pushback, and I'm going to explain it. They're like, oh, well, people buying guns is a good thing, Paul. The more Americans that own guns, the better. When more Americans own guns, that's better for everyone. No, it's not. No, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. That means there's more people that are on our side. I'm hoping that you're enjoying that brand of crack you're smoking, but that's not even close to being the case. Jared, do you think that what's his name? That the guy who did the video about demonstrating how AR-15s negligent discharge all the time. What is he? Jam Master Jay. Do you think Jam Master Jay?
No. It was Grandmaster Jay.
Whatever, Grandmaster Jay, who did the video explaining to us how every time you close the bolt of an AR-15, it discharges. And the XM15 bullpup, because it's got a lot of kick. That one. Do you think him and all his followers, they're all gun owners? So is that better for America? No. The radical leftists, the Antifas running around in Minneapolis and Wisconsin, the convicted felon. Now, he was a convicted felon, but he's still a gun owner. The guy that got shot in the elbow or the bicep by Kyle, he's a gun owner. Does that mean he's on our side? He's part of our team? No. So stop saying stupid crap like that. Stop regurgitating stupid crap, saying that because someone owns an object, that means that they're on our side, that they're part of our team. They're part of Team America. No, they're not. Guns are just objects, okay? It's the will that's what's important. Think about mindset tactics, skill, and gear, right? Mindset, number 1, tactics, number 2, skill, number 3, gear, number 4. You know, in New York, going back to New York in the 70s and early 80s, before Giuliani cleaned the place up, the number 1 tool for street thugs to commit robberies was not a switchblade. It wasn't even any kind of knife. It was a sharpened flathead screwdriver. Why? Because A, they could murder people with flathead screwdrivers, and they did. If you get stabbed with, all it takes is a quick couple passes with a file to put a sharp edge on a screwdriver. And if someone shoves it into you, if it goes in more than a couple inches, you're probably going to die. You're going to bleed a lot if you don't die. Right? But also, if they just threw it down on the ground, it's not a knife. It's not an illegal tool, you know. It's a screwdriver. And you've got a Salient Arms Glock 17. Okay, you spent $2,500 on a Glock because you have that kind of money and time in your hands, and a dude with a sharpened screwdriver is going to stab you to death. No, he's not. Well, he might, because the difference is what? The will, the mindset, the commitment. If you're going to be dangerous on demand, if you're going to carry a gun, if you're going to have a tool on you, whether it's a freaking Ivor Johnson 38 Smith & Wesson or a Salient Arms Glock or whatever in between, that's nice and all, but you have to have the will to actually do what needs to be done. Skill is not enough. Gear is certainly not enough. Buying objects just means you own an object. I mean, right now in America, there are more people that own objects than ever have in the entire history of our country. I mean, I think it was something over the last year, the increase in gun ownership has gone up something like 50%, which is massive. Like if gun ownership went up 3% in a year, it would be considered a big spike, right? So when you have a 50% increase in gun ownership, Jared, if everybody who owned a gun was de facto on Team America, pro-liberty, pro-freedom, pro-Bill of Rights, Joe Biden wouldn't be able to show himself in public. There would be no question. If everyone who owned a gun was like, yep, we're all about Bill of Rights, freedom, Constitution, founding principles, because we're gun owners, right? There's not one Democrat in America that could get elected. But that's not the case, is it?
No. And I want to go back to the will versus skill thing for a minute. Talking about criminals having the will to do what needs to be done. And one question that it's not really a question, it's more of like I'm opining here. As a law-abiding citizen who is also a gun carrier, and that's describing probably everybody that's listening to me right now, when you're mulling around about your day and a thug decides to inject themselves into your day, they've already made the decision to do what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been a thug before, so maybe there's different levels of deciding. It's like, as a thug, okay, I'm going to mess with this person. Depending on what they do, then I'm going to make another decision. But they have their narrow path of decision making. And us on the other end who are being harassed, you've got a wide variety of decisions that need to be made and actions that need to be taken. So you're already on the downside of that. You're already going uphill. So
you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, you're at a disadvantage. You're on the upside. But so the thug, they've made their decision to do what they're going to do. You have to first you have to react to that thing. And B, you've got more decisions that need to be made because you're thinking, oh crap, I've got a family. You know, what if I don't do this thing the right way and then I end up not being with my family anymore, whether it be dead or in jail. Mm-hmm. And all those things go through your head. And the best way that you can, or at least that I've found that you can shorten your decision and action taking process is to get the training.
Mhm.
is to put yourself in scenarios that you wouldn't be in normally in every day, like force on force, a stressful training class, etc. And that actually will help you make the decision that you need to make.
You see everything in the big list, Jared. What you just said, mindset, tactics, skill, and gear. Excuse me. God damn it. Everything that's on that list actually builds up towards the other part.
Yeah.
So, tactics and skill. If you have good tactics and you have skill, and then of course you have what needs to go with them. You have the stuff that needs to go with them, the gun. People say, well, if gun's not an important thing, then why do we carry them? No, I didn't say it wasn't. It's like saying, well, I own a fire extinguisher. I bought it. I took it out of the box and I set it on the counter. I don't know how to use it, but it's there. So if there's a fire, there's a fire extinguisher there. Well, the fire extinguisher doesn't put the fire out. And the gun doesn't actually operate itself. You need to know how to do that. They have to go together. But the more skill that you have and the better able you are to apply tactics. And where do you learn tactics? You learn tactics in training. You learn all that, and that helps you with the will part. That helps you with the mindset part. If you can't have a solid winning mindset if you have nothing to back it up, if you have nothing to support it. So these things are all mutually supporting. But unfortunately, what we do as Americans is we try and skip past all that stuff. And we go, like I said, we go to some Gucci Glock guy and we pay him $2,500 for a pistol that looks cool on Instagram. And then we don't take any training. Oh, I don't need to take training. I have a 3.5 ounce trigger on my, derpity derp Glock. My Glock with side cuts, with dust vents. Yeah. Why do people do that, Jared? Why do people put dust vents in their slides of their guns so they can let more dust in?
Because they haven't taken it through a training class where you have to maneuver around low on the ground.
But yeah, my point is this: as Americans, what do we always constantly do? We try and buy our way around. Oh, I don't need to go to a training class because I bought the super coolest, most gee whiz. I bought a $3,000 precision bolt action rifle. So the gun shoots itself? Well, with a gun that good, you can't miss. Really? Is that how that works? So, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to will versus skill, the only way you're going to develop the will or the mindset is through continued training, through continued practice, through continued study. But at some point in time, you're going to have to make a mental commitment. It's the old computer programmer, if then, go to, that kind of stuff. If then. If this happens, then I will do this. And unfortunately, like as Jared said, when you're attacked, the moment you realize, first of all, you have to recognize the attack, which many people do not. And after you recognize it, then you have to make a decision. And you're behind the power curve because the guy who's attacking you's already done all that stuff. He's already made the decision. He's already picked his target. He's already made his decision. He's already begun his action.
So now the only thing that he has to decide upon is how far am I going to take this?
Yeah, he just has to finish. That's all he has to do. He's already started. He's made a decision. He's begun. All he has to do is finish. And you're way behind. And if you're sitting there thinking, oh, man, I don't know. And this is where we become even more and more handicapped because we confuse the issue. Police officers have the issue confused constantly because, well, here I am. I made a traffic stop, and next thing I know, a guy jumps out of the car with a knife, and he's stabbing and slashing at me. And now I have to think, well, if I shoot this guy, even though I'm 100% in the right, the mayor, who's a Democrat, is going to crucify me, and the media is going to crucify me, and they're going to, throw rocks at my house and yada, yada, yada. You can't, in that situation, if you're thinking those thoughts, you're going to lose. You're either going to lose your life, or you're going to lose lots of blood, or you're going to lose something else. The fact of the matter is, you have to commit. You have to have the will to do what needs to be done, and it has to be clear. And if you're going to be dangerous on demand, if you're carrying around a gun because you think you're gonna bluff a bad guy, well, I would never. I don't even carry it loaded, but I pointed at him. You are setting yourself up for an ugly death.
I have a question. Do you think that people that are naturally skilled at something, do you think they're at a disadvantage because they don't have to go through a let's say just a training class to acquire the skill? So do you think they're at a disadvantage in the will portion of that?
I don't know how many people, when it comes to mechanical stuff, I don't know how many people are like just natural. I mean, I guess you could be mechanically adept. You could be like Eddie Van Halen, who couldn't read music.
R.I.P.
But he could play he could play any instrument. He could play the piano, he could play the drums, he could play guitar, but he couldn't read one sheet of music. Sheet music was completely foreign to him.
That's kind of.
Did you ever see the interview that he did?
No.
He did an interview about 5 years ago, and he was talking to the lady, and he said his mom had him and his brother do piano lessons, and he took years and years of piano lessons, and he was so good at mimicking, and he could play by ear, and he could also watch someone do something, and then he could repeat that. He was like a savant like that. He said, but he couldn't read sheet music. So I would sit down with my instructor, and he would open up the sheet music, and he would play it, and then he would say to me, all right, play what I just played. And he goes, and I would. And he goes, it was years later that he just gave me sheet music and said, play this. And I said, I can't do that. He goes, what are you talking about? He's like, I can't read music. He goes, what do you mean you can't read music? How did you do all that other? He goes, I just listened to it and repeated it. So
that's when his instructor realized, whoa, this guy's amazing.
Well, he said he was angry at him. He's like, you've been lying to me this whole time. He's like, well, I mean, I did what you asked me to do. I just didn't do it the way you wanted me to.
Yeah.
But getting back to the skill versus will thing, you've got the will's more important than the skill. And at some point in time, you need to have that epiphanous moment where you figure out that, hey, if then, and that's something that we try and teach in firearms training, in fight training, is if this stimulus occurs, then I will. Ed Morales years and years ago, when after he survived the Miami shootout, and they advanced him in his career, and he moved over to the FBI Academy, he would tell those young skulls full of mush, he would tell them, stop thinking if something bad happens to me. Well, if something bad happens to me, then I will. He said, think when I am attacked. He says, and I know I said if then because that's computer language, because when then is not computer language. But he would say, look, because if you give yourself that out, if you give yourself that mental out, if you say the word if you base your training around if, what you're doing is you're giving yourself a mental out. You're saying, well, this probably won't happen. Because you cannot train for this probably won't happen. You have to train for when this happens. And it's a difference. And that's part of will. That's part of mindset. Mindset and will in this context are very, very close to being the same. That's how you're supposed to train infantrymen. You don't train them. You don't go out and say, well, if you ever happen to encounter the enemy, maybe, I don't know, then you'll do this. No. You say, when you encounter the enemy, this is what you will do. When we spring the ambush, when we're on combat patrol, when we engage, this is what we'll do. You don't say if. You say, well, Paul, if I do that, then I'm a bad person and I'm looking for trouble. No, you're not. Stop being an imbecile. Stop being weak. Prepare yourself. If you get, when you give yourself the if, you're giving yourself an out. You need to understand that will is more important than skill. And at some point in time, you have to develop the will to do what needs to be done. If you've never been in an immediate hostile encounter, a fight situation, an actual non-scripted fight. I know a lot of people have been on scripted fights, like, well, you knew when you got there, you're like, okay, you're going to fight, I'm going to fight, we're going to fight. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the non-scripted stuff, the, hey, just walking along, living my life, and bam, here's a problem. I have to deal with it. That's how you know that you have the will, whether it's a medical problem, whether it's a fight problem, whatever that problem is. You weren't expecting it, it occurred, and then you immediately dealt with it. And that's a good thing. That's what you want to do. Go ahead.
One more thing that's talking about problems here. I've recently realized that the profession of woodworking is a constant problem solving. Essentially, it's a problem solving activity.
You learned that.
I did, and I knew it before. I kind of forgot. And when we were doing, Alex and I have been building this closet for, it's been 6 weekends now, on and off. And what I realized is that it's just a continuous, like, unless you're professional, I'm not a professional, and it's just a continuous funnel of problems. And so you do something, and then you take it in there, you go to fit it, and you're like, this didn't fit the way I thought it was going to. Okay, well, how do we solve that problem? And so that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, that's actually a great activity to practice problem solving, is on the weekends when you're doing something. It doesn't have to be woodwork. It could be metalwork. It could be just crafting something on your weekends. Is you're not only are you getting away from technology and giving yourself the ability to be productive in a different way, but you're also taking part in a problem solving activity it's helping you get better at solving those problems. And the more problems you solve, the better you get at it. So I just thought it was
basically just described all physical work.
Yep.
Whether it's mechanics, whether you're working on an engine, whether you're doing woodworking, whether, whatever you're doing, it's a continuous problem solving situation. You come up with an issue and you figure out how to, work around it.
Unless it's electricity, then you probably don't want to.
Well, you don't want to come up with creative solutions for electricity. You're like, I'll just wire all these together.
Yeah.
I'll just use 22 rimfire to close the circuit.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. It's like the olden days when people would burn their houses down by putting in fuses. See, before we had breaker boxes, Jared, we used to have these things called fuse boxes. You don't know about this.
They're in cars.
Yeah, they were screw-in fuses.
Yeah.
Right. And when they would blow, you have to remove them, throw them away, and put a new one in, right? Like in a car. But like old guys figured out that they could put a penny in there and put it back on and just override the fuse and use the penny. The house burned down. No. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's those things that, like, my dad showed me how to do this. Yeah, your dad was a pyromaniac. Your dad was not very smart, and he should have not told you to do that. But yeah, fuse boxes. When I was a kid, we didn't have breakers.
I did not know that.
Boxes. They had boxes in the basement, and they had fuses, screw-in fuses, just like in a car. Only not, they weren't screwing in a car, but and when pop, it's like the Christmas Story. He goes, my dad could change a fuse faster than a jackrabbit on a date.
Yeah.
He's like, hold it, a fuse is out. And now we're so spoiled. You just go downstairs and you look at you flip it, which one, and it comes back on, right? Yeah. So there you go. All right, we got a question.
It's from Daniel Willis, 1982. I'm not sure where this one came from. Probably the Discord or the Facebook.
YouTube.
Maybe the YouTubes. It says, in getting parts together to build an AR pistol, is it better to buy a complete upper like a PSA or piece one together?
If it's your first time and you haven't been through a gunsmithing class, buy one that's already assembled because, well, I mean, unless you just want a trial and error.
Unless you want to do the problem solving thing that we were
unless you
talking
want to
about.
do the problem solving, like this gun won't run. I wonder why. Let me try it again. Yeah, it's better to buy because the main thing you need to worry about is the gas tube. Whether it's spaced properly, whether it's staked properly, whether it's vented properly, the gas system on a pistol. If you screw that up, the gun's going to become it'll be a single shot, and you'll get one round and then it won't cycle. So, yeah, if it's your first time and you've never actually been through a training class or an armorer's class, if you've been through an armorer's class and you know how to do it, great. You got and also tools. There are specialty tools that you're going to need that you probably, an AR lower, there are only a couple of tools that you need for that. The number one tool is the detent, the spring detent installation tool. That's the number one tool you need. For the most part, you can put an AR-15 lower together almost just with your hands, but an upper is a bit more complicated. So, I mean, if you're up for an adventure, yeah, but if you just want to put something together that's going to work, buy one that's already assembled. That is my advice to you. All right. The media lies. I don't believe you, Paul. I don't believe you. The media doesn't lie. Yes, they do. And we've got several examples. I had to remind you guys of this last election cycle. And I'm going to remind you again because things have not changed. The media is still in the back pocket of the Democrat Party. And I'm going to give you guys a little history lesson. If you don't know, if the names Woodward and Bernstein don't mean anything to you, and you might want to know, you might know what Watergate is. When I was a kid, I used to hear Watergate all the time, and I didn't know what the heck Watergate was. I thought it was a dam. You know, when I was in elementary school, my parents are sitting around the kitchen table talking about Watergate, and I'm 8 years old or 7 years old, and I'm like, is it like a dam that holds back water? Like the Hoover Dam is a Watergate? No. The Watergate was a hotel. Woodward and Bernstein were investigative reporters. They made a movie about them called All the President's Men. Long story short, Woodward and Bernstein were investigative reporters who essentially brought down Richard Nixon. They exposed Nixon for cheating, for lying and cheating. And so that was back when if a president was caught lying and cheating, they had to leave. they didn't have, I mean, Nixon, say what you want about Nixon, but Nixon was classy enough to actually resign, not force them to go through an impeachment. Whereas in Clinton, he lied and cheated and said, I don't care. I'm not going anywhere. I did not have sex with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky. And depends on what the definition of is. He actually said that. He said that. He wanted to know what they meant by is. Yes, exactly. So Woodward and Bernstein took down Nixon. And up to that point, you had competing journalism in America. If you go back and you study your American history, you had competing journalism. There were some news outlets that were very pro-Constitution, pro-liberty, whether they were pro-Republican or whatever. And then you had those that were exactly the opposite. You know, they were all about whatever was popular at the time. They're populist, and they lean towards the Democrat Party or the progressive movement. I mean, the progressive movement in America has been around since the 1920s. So you had journalists and you had media outlets that were progressive. But there was kind of a split in America. If you look at the different, the Sun Times versus the Tribune versus this versus that, they had different leanings. Essentially, if you want to look at a time in America, you say, well, Paul, when did the mainstream news media go over the cliff and just decide they were going to be the cheerleaders for the American progressive movement, for the Democrat Party. You can go back to the 70s. Back then, that's when we radicalized our colleges. When people that started going to colleges and they came out as left-wing progressive hippies, that's when we started turning out these journalist majors, these journalism majors that were steeped in the progressive ideologies of their college professors. They were essentially socialists, and they went out and they got in, these socialists, they graduated from college as fully indoctrinated progressive socialists, and they went to work for who? New York Times, Chicago Tribune, then CNN, and then ABC and NBC and so forth. And before you knew it, what you had was essentially the major media outlets, whether it's television or newspapers, who are completely in the tank for the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party can't do no wrong, and they see it as their job to run defense and often run offense for the Democrat Party. I'm going to remind you guys of something that I reminded you of in 2016. It was either 2 or 3 weeks before the election cycle between Carter and Reagan. Carter was an abysmal failure, and we've kind of like glossed over that over the years because he built houses for poor people and stuff. But Jimmy Carter was an abysmal failure as a president. Horrible. And it didn't take 4 years for people to know that. But by the time 4 years was up, people were like, okay, yeah, this guy's terrible. But the New York Times, 2 weeks out, Carter's going to win. New York Times predicted Jimmy Carter would beat Ronald Reagan. They had him 47% to 36% for Reagan. And I think that was the year that Anderson ran as an independent or something. Ronald Reagan destroyed Jimmy Carter. Just in the 1988 election was not even close. There's no chance it was close. Carter conceded before the California votes were even.
And gonna write that time down.
Our times is
Time out. If you can hear me, time out. Time out. Okay, you're back. You dropped hard for a second there.
for some reason I just got a flash that said your internet connection is unstable. I don't know why.
All right, you sound better now.
Yep.
So go ahead and say something else.
New York Times, Carter, Reagan.
All right, you seem to be back. And
All right.
just so you're aware, we are 53 minutes in.
Yes, I get it.
Right,
Okay.
Just letting you know. All right, go ahead and pick back up where you were in 3, 2.
So you guys are out there saying, okay, Paul, okay, we get it. In 1980, the New York Times predicted Carter would beat Reagan, even though there was no chance in hell that was going to happen. Wasn't going to happen. Why did they do it? Did they not pay attention? Did they just poll themselves? Like, well, we went around the New York Times office and we polled ourselves and we said, hey, who are you going to vote for? I'm voting for Carter. You going to vote for Carter? I'm voting for Carter. And like 12 of us, we all said we're going to vote for Carter. So we're like, hey, he's going to win. Really? New York Times objective journalists. And you say, Paul, that was a long time ago. Oh, really? Let me remind you that the New York Times in October 18th, well, a little more than 4 years ago, had Hillary Clinton 91% up on Donald Trump. 91%. 2 weeks out of the election in 2016, New York Times said that Hillary Clinton had a 91% chance of winning. Yes. Did they really poll and come up with 91%? Really? Who, like I said, who are they polling for? Now you say, Paul, okay, well, big deal. So who cares? You should care. Why would they do that? Why would the New York Times, now CNN did it, and, you know, all the big news outlets, they all did it. I'm just using the New York Times as an example here. Why would they do that? Why would they 2 weeks before the election come out and say, hey, we've already done all of our polling and our candidate, who just happens to be a Democrat, has a 91% chance of winning? What would that purpose would that be? To depress the other side. Why do you come out and predict a winner 2 weeks before the actual election? Why do you do that? To depress the other side, to make people feel like, oh man, I'm not even going to waste my time going to the polls. I mean, it's going to be a landslide. Was it a landslide? Did Hillary Clinton win by 91% in 2016? No. They knew it. So what do we got going on right now? We have basically the same thing. We have the big news outlets. They're like, oh, Joe Biden he's so much further ahead, so much further ahead. Don't forget the anecdotal evidence that we were given back in 2016. We drove around and like you could drive around the country and see Trump signs everywhere. And you only saw Clinton signs in the like college professors and public school teachers' front lawns. People were not, I don't care what you say, people were not excited about her. The supposed excitement about her was fabricated.
I say it's the same right now.
You cannot tell me that the base is like, man, we can't wait for Joe Biden to become the president. He's going to be so good. He's so intelligent and articulate and well-spoken, and he's got these great ideas to really? He's been in government for 47 years, and now he has a plan to fix America. Why didn't he fix it for the 8 years he was in the White House? Oh, he couldn't. Why didn't he fix it when he was a senator? Oh, he couldn't. Really? My question to anybody who has a Biden sign in their yard is, what about this clinical dementia patient excites you?
He's not Trump.
Huh?
He's not Trump.
Yeah.
And that's
no, Trump.
He's not Trump, and that's better than literally anything else they could ask for.
Right. Exactly. And that's scary. Now, and this is what we need to ask ourselves. How do people get to that point in their lives where they're such mindless robots that even though you can demonstrate to them that their candidate has clinical, this isn't me being an a-hole or, being mean. This guy has clinical brain damage. Demonstrable clinical brain damage. And they're willing to completely overlook that. Why? Because they've been told by the media for, well, not 4 years, because we had to start hating Trump about 6 months out of the election because we didn't care. Remember when all the Hollywood people told us they swore, on a stack of Korans or whatever, that Trump would never be elected? Remember that video? Tom Hanks and his idiot self saying that dinosaurs will come down from outer space before Trump becomes the president. That man will never be elected. Okay. So about 6 months before the election, when they realized that Trump was a serious threat, the media started ginning up all this manufactured hatred. Now ask yourself this. I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to ask you to be honest with yourselves, whether you consider yourselves a libertarian or a centrist or a moderate, or maybe you're one of these psychotic Democrats in my audience. Joe Biden, and we asked this, people were asking this about 8 weeks ago. Donald Trump's sons are out there in the spotlight, like front and center, campaigning for their dad. And everyone says, where's Hunter Biden? He's supposed to be this great businessman, this genius businessman. He's so smart that he can just go to a foreign country and get a $250,000 salary just for showing up. That's how great he is of a businessman, right? He can go to Ukraine and be hired and given hundreds of thousands of dollars just because he's such a genius. If he's so great and he's so smart, why isn't Hunter Biden out campaigning for his dad? Well, maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he's shy. Maybe he's a crackhead and his teeth are falling out. Maybe. The Hunter Biden laptop story, in case you don't know, the FBI is in possession of his laptop, and it has factual evidence demonstrating that Joe Biden was 100% aware of his son's dealings with Ukraine. That he did meet the Ukrainian officials. Oh, and Hunter Biden was in China too. And he did introduce his Chinese associates to his dad, who was vice president at the time. Hunter Biden had photos of him with a crack pipe hanging out of his mouth, passed out. Oh, you can't penalize a man for the actions of his child. Okay, whatever. This is the intellectual honesty check. If the tables were turned and that laptop and those pictures were all about Eric Trump or Don Jr., do you think that the entire mainstream news organization, CNN, MSN, ABC, CBS, would be purposely and deliberately hiding and ignoring that story? This is an honesty check. Do you think that CNN would say nothing to see here? This is personal, private business, and there's no need to embarrass the president by exposing what his kid did. Do you believe that for 1 second? Facebook, if you put up any story about Hunter, factual evidence, like actual photographs of Hunter Biden snorting coke off of a hooker's butt or passed out with a crack pipe in his mouth, Facebook is censoring it and removing it. Why? And would they do the same thing if it was, instead of being a Biden child, it was a Trump child? Would they do that? And then come back to me and tell me that the media doesn't lie for the Democrats. You need to understand this. You need to understand it. We have mountains of factual evidence. And anyone who denies it or won't accept it they're just delusional, and they're dangerous. They're dangerously delusional. All right, that's all I got for you guys today. Tomorrow, we're going to come back, and I have real-life examples of how thought crime, from 1984. Remember when Orwell wrote this book, and he said, this is a warning, not a playbook. I'm warning you that if you don't pay attention, this is what's going to. If you don't pay attention, this is what's going to happen. Thought crime is real. All right, remember, you're a beginner once.
You're a student for life.
We appreciate your reviews. If you haven't left a review or updated yours recently, head on over to Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast player to voice your opinion. Don't forget to join us at the Student Lounge, a place for like-minded individuals to learn, connect, and support each other. No chicanery will be tolerated. Remember to check studentofthegun.com daily for new, free content and giveaways. Watch, listen, read, shop, and connect at studentofthegun.com. Are you a social butterfly? Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for new content each and every day at Student of the Gun. Watch Student of the Gun TV and videos from our trusted partners on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Chromecast, and even AirPlay. Go to studentofthegun.com for direct links, and remember, you're a beginner once, a student for life.